Hey guys, it's Ashley from Wholesaling Out of the Box. Today we're going to talk to you about Chapter 6 of Traction by Gino Wickman. So this is part of our ongoing Traction series, which we're releasing new episodes of every week, both on our podcast and on YouTube. If you're interested in catching some of the old episodes, just go back and look at either of those feeds. And now to get us started, it's Shawn Bowen.
Hey guys, what's happening? Shawn Bowen here, continuing our book Traction here, and we're in chapter 6. So this is the issues component. So the fourth essential component is gaining traction, is having discipline to face and solve your organization issues as they arise. It's human nature to put things off, making it harder to make a decision. If given the option, most people would prefer to not address an issue and hope that it goes away on its own. The reluctant act can be dragged out on growth and is extremely frustrating to watch. Your ability to exceed and in the direction proportion to your ability to solve problems. The better you are at solving problems, the more successful you'll become. Most leadership teams spend their time discussing the heck out of everything, but rarely solve anything. What is draining your energy is not having a lot of work to do, rather than it's having unresolved issues. In this issues components chapter, you'll learn that the next two EOS tools to wield against obstacles holding your company back. The first is discipline of creating an issues list. The second is the issue solving track. Once you set them up, you'll knock out those obstacles with no problems. So let's talk about the issues list. It's normal to have issues. The sooner you could admit that, and you have them and not view them as negative thinking or some kind of weakness, the faster you'll move forward. The good news is that there are only a handful of issues in the history of business. The same ones pop up over time and time again. What changes in your ability to solve them? The key is to create an environment that smokes them out. Virtual Step is creating a workspace where people feel comfortable calling out the issues that stand in the way of your vision. With an open and honest organization, the issues list becomes a tool that creates a discipline to keep all of your issues out and in the open and organized in one place. There should be 3 types of issue lists in your organization. The first one is your VTO. These are the company's issues, the vision, traction, organizer. This cannot be shelved beyond 30 days. These issues tackled in the future quarterly meetings, the issues that are not being big enough or priority for the week or this quarter must be stored somewhere so that you don't lose sight of them. The VTO issues list is the place for that. This list will include issues as diverse as new product ideas, key employment issues, technology needs, office relocation, and capital needs at the need of HR policies. They'll go there, and if not, the quarter they'll be solved in the quarter because you have a bigger fish to fry. So the weekly leadership team issues list. The time frame on these is much shorter. These are the relevant issues for the week and the quarter that must be tackled at the highest level. These issues must be resolved in your weekly leadership team meetings. You should not be solving department issues. These will typically be more strategic in nature. If it can be solved at a department level, push it down. Leadership issues include things as diverse as company rocks being off track, a bad number in the scorecard, key employee issues, major client difficulties, and processes and systems related to problems. And number 3, the departmental issues list. These issues are on a more local level. These include all the relevant department issues for the week that must be tackled during the week during department meetings. The sales team might have hitting call numbers, presentations, closing business, and marketing and presentation materials on their list, while the operations team might have fulfilling orders, purchasing, customer complaints, and low production numbers on theirs. With an open and honest culture and 3 issues lists clear, issues will start flowing freely. You can now compartmentalize each issue into the appropriate list. Each issue that arises in your organization has a place, which means you have to start working on solving them. The most effective way to do that is by following the issues list solving track.
Yeah, so before we move on to the solving track, I just want to go back to the issues list and kind of discuss how we're trying to organize or reorganize our company, and this is a big part of it. So, sorry, I've realized I say so a lot and I'm trying to get out of it. This is something that we've been discussing a lot over the last couple of months, and it's something that we really want to fix moving into 2020, or not fix, but get a handle on, I guess, is a better term, because we're going to be growing our company and expanding. So once it gets beyond the core 4 people, we are really going to need to divide up meetings and divide up issues and things like that. So as we've been talking about it, we've really been discussing, how do we have a marketing department or a acquisitions department, a dispositions department, all of these things. And then who's going to report to who? How do we handle this? How do we make goals for these? And I think this is going to be really important moving forward, is making sure we relegate departmental issues to departments. So if Cam is heading the dispo acquisitions department or whatever we decide, then he needs to be the one to handle anything that is mainly in that department. And Shawn and I aren't going to know about it unless it becomes a super big issue that we are discussing on the weekly leadership team list. And then back up to the higher list is, if something really, really big is happening, that's when it's going to be Shawn and directly with that person, whether it's the acquisitions manager or whoever, and that's going to be, structuring it like that. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts, Cam and Shawn, about making these issue lists and how we're going to be able to do that moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's very key, because I've been involved in organizations both, where the weekly leadership team issues and the meeting is trying to solve departmental problems. And, as mainly a departmental leader in those organizations that I'm talking about, right, where I've been in organizations where the leadership team is trying to dive down into the department's issues and solve them. And I'm always like, get the fuck out, because this is mine. This is mine. This is where I run this. You know what I mean? And it just really, it stifles any kind of creativity, any kind of leadership, and hurts the team that is that department. And I've been parts of organizations where there is none of that. And it's exactly like it's pictured here, where the departmental leader and the department team, they have regular meetings and they take care of everything within that department. And then the leader of that department obviously has a leadership team meeting. And then if something needs to be elevated, it does. But more often than not, it does not. And that definitely creates, I think it's a camaraderie in here for sure. And it creates a great team atmosphere within that department, because, they're taking care of the department. They're pulling their weight in the organization, and they're doing it successfully, and the leaders don't have to worry about that. So I think all this is very, very important.
I think one of the most important parts in any company is kind of what you said, Cam, is allowing the people that you put in the right seat to do their job and not micromanage them, right? Give me 1 second.
Anyway, so while Shawn had to step away from the mic, I do think on page 133, it says at the very bottom, you cannot achieve this openness if people in the organization fear losing their jobs or some other terrible ramification. Therefore, trust starts with you. You set the tone by openly admitting mistakes and issues and then working together to solve them. Everyone must know that it's okay to raise issues as long as they are corrected. So I think that's also very, very important. And it's something that I personally am trying to work on, is admitting when I'm wrong or when I've made a mistake and saying, okay, I don't know how to fix this, and it's time to crowdsource this option. And what does that look like as you've got these, I like to think of them as waterfalls for the different meetings and the different issue lists, where you've got the small one at the top and the medium one in the middle, and then the large one at the bottom, which is the departmental. So crowdsourcing and having the water flow down to the medium pool. If no one can fix it there, go down to the large pool and see who can help fix that issue. Because not only does it show people that, okay, people who are higher up in the company can make these mistakes and are willing to admit that, but it gives them the opportunity to help fix the mistakes and eventually grow and grow in the company and potentially get a promotion or something, however you want to phrase that for your company. So I think that's a great way of having this openness and showing people that not only is it okay, but it can help you as well.
Definitely. That's a huge part of any company. And that's what I was trying to say before, is allowing yourself to put the right people in the right seat to do the job and not micromanage them. And those department heads, as you grow into the size of a company, and you get to fortunately call it department heads, right? Then that happens. We always make a joke of it in our company of like staying in your lane, right? And it is a very true statement. There is no reason to go over to something that is not what you're good at and try to throw in a monkey wrench and say, hey, here's how to fix it, right? Let the people do what they're good at. Let that department head run their team and let them do what they need to do in order to come back to the leadership team and submit information, submit numbers, and share ideas, to let the leadership team make a discussion. And then, like Ashley said, waterfall down to those departments and let them run their teams. So yeah, this is one of those things that definitely we as a company right now are growing, and it's happening quicker and faster than where we're used to, which is good, but that requires good calls, good conversations, and allowing people to grow. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. All right. Where did I leave off here? 3, 4. Okay.
The issue solving track.
Got it. All right. The issue solving track. Most teams suffer from different challenges when solving issues. The common ones include fear of conflict, lack of focus, lack of discipline, lack of commitment, and personal ego. Here's a simple tool that will allow you to resolve your issues. The issue solving track consists of 3 steps: identify, discuss, and solve. So in the identify part, clearly identifying the real issue, because that stated problem is rarely the real one. The underlying issue is always a few layers down. Most of the time, the stated problem is the symptom of the real issue. So you must find the root of the matter. By batting the issue back and forth, you will reach the true cause. The time spent identifying the real issue can make far longer than the time used for the second and third steps, and that's okay. That's because the root of the problem may have multiple symptoms. Put another way, sometimes you will spend most of your time identifying the issue. As a result, the discuss and solve steps will take just a few minutes because the real issue is now clear.
So do either of you guys have an example of this?
Let's see. And identify. I would think the most immediate one is identifying a problem that we think about. Well, I mean, we just talked about one. I don't know if we want that on our recording.
So the first thing I think of with this is identifying an issue. So something that we've really been discussing lately is making sure that we have enough leads coming in to support growing the company. And we've really been looking at obviously how to fix that. But a little bit of our thought process here was, okay, the issue is, do we have enough leads? And the answer was like, this is a little bit more complicated than do we have enough leads? Because there are a lot of different things that went into this. The first of which is COVID. So we get a lot of our profit from probate leads. Now, when COVID happened, all the courthouses started to shut down, rightly so. And not only was it hard or impossible for us to go in and get new leads, but it was hard for people that actually needed to qualify for probate to do so, because they couldn't necessarily go in to do that. And obviously every courthouse is different, so everyone had their own rules, but I know with some you had to mail in or drop box in your paperwork, and then if it wasn't right, you had to redo it and get it back. Whereas before, you could go in and they could say, oh no, this isn't right, and you could correct it right there. So the process was taking longer. And so going back to the issue was, okay, we don't have enough leads. Is that because if we're doing probate or code or tax or any of those lists, is it because not enough people are getting dinged on that? Is it because we need to find better lead sources? What is the main issue here? And so that was kind of what my thought was, but I want to get your feedback, Cam and Shawn.
Yeah, so I see that as well. I think something that we digested, it's been a few weeks, but you know, we talk about time management, right? And somebody says, in this case, it would be me, I don't have enough time right now to get to all the phone calls, right? I can't get to my line in the sand that we talked about in the last chapter. And it wasn't that I didn't have enough time. And once we talked it out, right? And we talked it out, it was how my time was being spent, right? And how can we employ somebody else to take care of everything from all the lists that we have come in every week, right? To refine the process so that more of the steps were being done before we actually got the list back, right? So there was less work for me to do, and in turn, less work for Ashley to do, to give some time back. So it's not that, like, that's what I think it's saying here is, it's not that you don't have enough time. That's not the problem. There's only so many hours in a day. We can't make a 25th hour of the day. Let's dive, you know, or let's peel back the onion a little bit is another saying, right? To see what the true problem is. And it's how the time was being spent and how we could more efficiently spend the time. And I needed you guys' help, honestly, to let me see, or help me see that there's some more steps that our virtual assistants could be taking to give me more time back.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good one, and one that we've been discussing a lot, especially in relation to you and I, and trying to give more stuff to our assistants and get them more involved and what that looks like. Yeah. And I will say, I think we finally have kind of a plan in place, and it's good because it's been a rough couple of months as we've been trying to decide, how do we move forward? Will this even work if we try it? Not just you know, like business wise, but can we do this with our systems, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good example of that.
As far as me, this is from a owner standpoint, where it comes back to leadership team, and you guys as that leadership team have been having these conversations, and then we come back to a huddle call when we do our meetings, and you guys are telling me what you're doing. So that again goes into the letting the team do what they're good at, and then allowing them to give them the tools that they need, right? Hey, Shawn, we need to hire a VA. We need to do this. Is the revenue there to support it? Yes, let's make it happen. Okay, what does that look like? Who does that team member need to be? And how do they get things off of your plate to better use your time at the highest use for what you do? And when I hate to say this, is like, everybody says, like, what's it worth an hour? Whatever they're good at, right? But there's a salary position, there's a commissions positions, but what's your most effective piece, right? Like, having Ashley do these small tasks that she's built and done does not have its highest use of her keep doing it. It's having that person that can do it. That's a very trainable process. These are the leadership. This is the leadership team waterfalling down to their people and getting the items that have to be done. And I think that's just really important. And it speaks to this part of this. You guys have figured this out and you've identified it. And now we're getting into the discuss and then solving. I think it's already gone through it. You guys have talked about it. You've discussed it and you've solved it. And realize, like, you have a plan of attack and a direction to go.
Yeah. Okay. Step 2, discuss. I have a lot of notes at the end of this one.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Most people spend the majority of their time at this step. They rarely identify the real problem before they start discussing, and thus they rarely solve anything. They just discuss everything ad nauseum, and they actually think that they're being productive. The task of clearly identifying an issue enables you to stay focused on the issue at hand and avoid tangents. Often you don't have time to spend much time in the decision step because the issue is so clear and the solution is so obvious. In its simplest form, the discussion steps into everyone's opportunity to say everything they have to about the issue. You get everything on the table in an open environment where nothing is scared. Nothing is sacred. I said scared. With the discussions start getting off track, you don't have to sit there helplessly. When someone starts to go into a tangent, get in a little bit of a habit of saying, tangent alert. It's a friendly triggering mechanism that keeps you on track. If the tangent is a real issue, but not relevant to the current one discussed, put it on the issues list and get to it in the order of priority. Upon the completion of this discussion step, all of your options, data, ideas, solutions, and concerns regarding the issue at hand will be out in the open. This enables you to move to step 3, which is making the issue go away forever. Let's hear it, Ashley.
Squirrel.
Yeah. So this is something that I will preface this by saying I think we are actively working on getting better at. We are really, really trying. Do I think we are succeeding? 50-50.
That's his way of saying no.
Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. I think a meeting we had a little bit in between recording these 2 chapters shows that today wasn't a good day for that. But like our thing is, instead of tangent, we say we're rabbit holing out or squirreling, something like that, because we do that. So we really need to get better at saying, oh, this is a tangent, but let me put it on the list for later. And then next week, or even this week if we need to, but we can rearrange the priority list. And so that is something that I think we need to, especially with our meetings, start to get better about, is like priority. Is it that important for everyone to know what's going on with every single property that we have under contract? I don't know. I think sometimes it's useful, sometimes not so useful. And so that's something that by the end of this year, I really want to refine for our meetings. And I do think on page 138 at the bottom, it says, everyone should say what they believe, but they should say it only once, because more than once is politicking. And while I don't think we mean it to be that way, I know I definitely have this issue too. You know, it's like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, you know, expecting a different result, saying the same thing and expecting a different result. And it's hard sometimes because you feel like you need to respond or that you need to contribute something, but in reality you already have. And are you actually adding anything to this conversation? And again, I am so bad about that. This is me calling myself out about it. So, but yeah, those are my thoughts about the discuss section. Cam, Shawn?
Go for it, Cam.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is to say, you know, say what you need to say, make it clear, and, you know, to move on, to have your voice heard, but not to repeat it over and over again, because then the discussion just keeps going and going and going and going when it doesn't really need to. And I think that, you know, like it says, the discussion time is the time to, you know what I mean, hash out all the issues and get them all out there, and to make sure those squirrels, because those squirrels make a 10-minute conversation turn into a 30-minute conversation. And sometimes they're good squirrels, man. You don't need to kill the squirrel, if you will, right? You just need to put the squirrel over there in a cage and let him out later. That's what I think.
Oh, this discussion is the best one. I am the worst at this because I am from the mindset of being the owner, and then now having, fortunately, really good department heads and team members to work with, that I do it all the time, right? Sucking up time, throwing a monkey wrench in it, totally going out of my lane. And it's part of something that I've been working on, right? And trying to get better at, which giving the team the ability of saying, squirrel, check, rabbit hole, like, come on back. Like, that kind of stuff is dire straits has to happen. Like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. But again, recognizing, notifying, doing something about it, and stop doing it is something I'm working really, really hard on. So yeah, I can resonate with this one big time. Huge, huge problem. So yeah, I would love to have Jacob on here because I know he can talk about this too, because that's one of his issues that we've talked about. Or being wordy. I know that a lot of people do that, being way wordy, talking too long. So yeah, this is one of those good ones. This is
That
one
is
of those good ones.
definitely me and Jacob.
Yeah. Taking things too long, talked about it versus just getting to the root of it, talk about it. Good, great. Let's move forward. Now let's solve it. Right.
Yeah. I do wonder because at one point it talks about discussing how you're discussing issues you're doing the discuss part and you think you're making progress when in reality you haven't identified the issue. And I do think we fall into that trap sometimes as well. I think sometimes we're so focused on this one point and having our voice heard that we get stuck into that quicksand, if you will, and we don't actually accomplish anything. And that's hard, especially when, as you're doing the discussion portion, you're talking, and suddenly someone says something and you have another idea about it. And so with those rebuttals, especially, it's really hard to keep things down and still make sure everyone is heard. But it does say later in the book too that consensus management does not work. So how much does everyone need to be heard? It's hard to find that balance.
I think having a really good team though, and having a very open team and having that dialogue available to be said freely, what you want to think, what you want to say, and know that there's no feelings on the table that are meant to get hurt, that there's no, I hate to say this, but like no political religion type basis that where things people get offended. Like as long as that conversation is talked about early and that people know what they can or shouldn't, like you can talk freely. And that's what the goal of, I feel like this discuss part is if the team doesn't have that agreement coming on board, they don't know, right? And they feel as though maybe they need to be reserved or not, versus I think we as a team are like, okay, there's these two things that we don't bring up, political and religion, everything else is open game, go, right? Like otherwise it's a really good free talking conversation to get that discussion out and then ultimately get, let's move to the next part of solving it. So I think that's really important. Anybody listens to this, if you bring it on to team members, make sure that's very clear in that hiring discussion, right? Of like the things that are expected, but not taboo to talk about, right?
Yeah. I do think that is really important because I follow politics very closely, and I know there are a lot of times where I've restrained myself. And because Shawn made the expectation clear, we don't talk about this. And that's fine. But then someone will make a comment and it's not necessarily like within our core group, and it might be in a different type of meeting. And I'm like, no, we don't talk about politics and do not engage. And it's hard, but that was an expectation that was set, and I'm an adult and I can control my actions, and that I just have to take responsibility for doing that.
Yep. That's just for our company. Anybody that's listening to this, like those are the things that me as a business owner just realized could be, and this is working around other people, being around other people's companies. I just realized like those two things usually can throw a rift through something pretty quick. So put it on the table as though these things are taboo. We don't bring them up. We don't talk about them because you could get into that conversation of hurting somebody's feelings or whatever. It's just like, hey, let's take this off the table. We don't worry about it. And that was a good thing. And I think everybody here can agree with that, that it's allowed things to flow, because there's some pretty good conversations that come from things that as long as you pull these certain pieces off, you don't get issues happening. Everybody agree?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I will say though, Shawn does let me rant occasionally if something happens and I'm like, man, I just need to say this. And he's like, okay, go ahead. And he gives me like 5 minutes and I'm like, okay, I'm ready now.
All right, get it off your chest. Let's go.
Only when it's just the two of us on a call.
True. Very true. That's the other part too, is knowing department heads and knowing your team, right? I mean, we say that that's like a policy for a company policy, but you got to know your team members too, right? It's good to have that ability to say, just let it rip. All right, good to go? moving on, right? Good stuff. All right, good to go there?
Yeah.
All
Let's
right.
move on to solve.
All right, so we're solving problems. The solve step is a conclusion or situation that usually becomes an action item for someone to do. The item ends up on the to-do list, and when the action is completed, the issue goes away forever. Solving issues takes time. By solving issues now, you'll save the time exponentially across departments by eliminating all future symptomatic issues. Three types of resolutions will emerge from an issue solving session. The first is when the issue is solved and requires action. The second is when the issue is merely awakened, and the conclusion is that everyone concurs that it's been awoke. The third,
Awareness.
the thirdness is when the issue needs more research or facts. In this case, someone is assigned an action item to do the research and bring it to a subsequent meeting. As you master this third step of the issue solving track and become stronger at solving your own issues, your team must internalize the following 10 important aspects of solving issues. 1, thou shalt not rule by consensus. Number 2, thou shalt not be a weenie. I totally lost that one. I didn't even remember that. Thou shalt be decisive. Thou shalt not rely on secondhand information. Thou shalt fight for the greater good. Thou shalt not try and solve them all. Thou shalt not live with it, in it, or change it.
Thou shalt live with it and
Live with it. Okay. Thou shalt choose short-term pain and suffering. Thou shalt enter the danger. Thou shalt take a shot. As some of these, I obviously don't resonate with me and or just reading abilities, but the 10 commandments on solving these issues, these are pretty interesting. The issue solving track always follows 3 steps: identify, discuss, and solve. The acronym for this track is IDS. So again, identify, discuss, and solve. As you move forward.
Before that, I want to talk a little bit about the solving part.
Okay.
Because I do think, back to the 3 types of resolutions, we are really good about this. We do go in and when we see, okay, this is the answer to the solution and now we need to take action, and we're pretty good at taking action. And then for the second part, if it's something that happens and we need to bring awareness to it. And with the third, if it needs more research or facts. And I think that's good. That's something Shawn and I especially discuss a lot, is I am like, I don't know if this is an issue now, but it's something that I am aware of and that we should keep tabs on. And whether, again, it's not a formal discussion on what the issue is, I think this is also something that you may not know what the issue is. And so that's when you need to bring more awareness to it and kind of observe.
Yes.
But yeah, the solving part is obviously very important. I'm not the most decisive person. There have been times when I've brought up things to Shawn and I'm like, well, I don't think we should do this. And he's like, okay, well, it's your call. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to make that call. You can make the call. I am just giving you my opinion.
All right. So the issue solving track always follows 3 steps. And we discussed those. Those were identified, discussed, and solved, also known as IDS. Mm-hmm. As you move forward in the mastering of the 6 key components of IDS, become an important aspect of your day-to-day running of the business. From now on, when faced with an issue, you simply IDS it. So, guys, I think these 2, well, this chapter specifically, is a really big one, right? I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and that's why, having a component is a big piece of this, but your vision of where you're going is highly important. Knowing your leadership team and what that looks like is a really big piece, but taking the time to identify, discuss, and solve, and not rabbit hole out, but truly get to the root of the problem, discuss how you're going to solve it, and then attack the solving issue. That is really important. This chapter is a really good hit, especially for us currently. We we're in the middle of growing, and this part is going to really help us. Right. So, and this is something that I own as a small company, and now we as a larger company are starting to turn into that. And a team of 6 with virtual assistants, it's going to go. And we need to have these discussions clearly defined so that we're not just fumbling around. So did you guys have anything else to finish this thing out on, or finish this chapter out on?
Yeah, I would say, so the 10 Commandments part. So I guess for a new wholesaler listening to this, and for us, I guess, the things that resonate with me is number 10, thou shalt take a shot. As a new wholesaler, you're going to have problems that are going to come up. You're going to have opportunities that are going to come up. You should discuss them and you should take your shot. There needs to be a degree of risk in this business. You need to take the shot and be prepared to measure what comes back and make decisions from them. And then the other one that resonates with me is number 8, thou shalt choose short-term pain and suffering. And what that means to me is when you have an issue in your company, you need to identify it, you need to talk about it, and you need to work toward a solution. You need to not live with it through long-term suffering. There might be short-term suffering, especially like right now while we're growing and there's additional things that we have to do, but those are only short-term things. Those are not going to jeopardize the long-term plan. But if you live with a bunch of short-term pain, life's going to suck after a while because it's just going to be pain. So, those do resonate with me. And I think that those should resonate with somebody new to the business, even if they're a one person show right now,
Definitely. Ashley, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Nothing else from me. So I'll go ahead and give all of our information if you don't have anything else, Shawn.
Good to go.
All right, cool. So thanks again, guys, for joining in on our Traction Chapter 6 discussion. We'll be back next week with Chapter 7, the process component. And if you're interested in going back and listening or watching our discussions on chapters 1 through 5, they are on our podcast feed or our YouTube channel, and along with a ton of other awesome information that can help both new wholesalers or people new to real estate investment and people that have been in it for a while, because I think we're a good example of a company who is trying to grow and scale and expand. So if you want to find us, just look for Wholesaling Out of the Box on your podcatcher of choice, YouTube, Instagram, and we're at wholesalingoutofthebox.com. Thanks again for listening, guys, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.